It is very rare that I do a video about anything on InfoWars, like a major story, not because I don't like InfoWars. I do. And I know there's a lot of haters of Alex Jones and InfoWars, but I'm telling you, I do appreciate InfoWars. And when I was waking up in 2005 and 6, I remember watching some of the documentaries he put together, some of the information on his site. I was checking their In Prison Planet every day. And I can't find holes with what he's doing. And a lot of you, well, he'll never mention the Jew connection. He's the Jesuits. They just shut down naturalnews.com because they wouldn't play ball against Alex Jones. Alex Jones doesn't work for the government. He's a shill. He works. Right. Move on with your flat earth selves. This is an article that I absolutely must read to you. Obamacare. Again, this is from InfoWars, but they've got a case here from the court. United States District Judge Rosemary M. Collier. And the title of this, Obama illegally robbed Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the two mortgage giants we bailed out and now own, to fund Obamacare. It was apparently Obamacare was failing so bad, and I already knew it was because I was doing the videos on it every chance I got. But it was worse than what I thought it was, simply because I'm looking at data and numbers, but I don't get to look at numbers that say not only is it terrible, it's downward spiral, it's going to be finished in the near future, but they're robbing Peter to pay Paul to keep it where it's at in its current downward spiral. Well, that makes it a whole lot worse. Obama diverted money from low-income housing to keep Obamacare alive, says InfoWars. Will this be the final nail in the coffin for the Affordable Care Act, commonly known as Obamacare? Federal court litigation provides evidence the Obama administration illegally diverted taxpayer funds that had not been appropriated by Congress in an unconstitutional scheme to keep Obamacare from imploding. In 2016, a U.S. judge, district judge that is, caught the Obama administration's Health and Human Services Department acting unconstitutionally and therefore put an end to the illegal diversion of taxpayer funds, but the Obama administration didn't stop there. And he lists a little piece here about the conclusion that the court made, dated May 12, 2016. Will grant summary judgment, etc. The Obama administration instead turned to the nation's two government-sponsored mortgage giants. Oh, so wait a minute. They were diverting taxpayer funds that had not been appropriated by Congress to help fund Obamacare. And when told by the judge, I guess, stop, they went after Freddie and Fannie. Maybe that's where this is going. That's interesting. The Obama administration instead turned to the nation's two government-sponsored mortgage giants, the Federal National Mortgage Association, commonly known as Fannie Mae, and the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, commonly known as Freddie Mac, to invent a new diversion of funds in a desperate attempt to keep Obamacare from collapsing. A key date is May 12, 2016. That was the day when the U.S. Judge, Miss Rosemary Collier, in the case U.S. House of Representatives versus Burwell, ruled against the Health and Human Services Secretary, Sylvia Matthews Burwell. Judge Collier decided HHS Secretary Burwell had no constitutional authority to divert funds Congress appropriated to one section of the Affordable Care Act to fund Obamacare subsidy payments to insurers under another section of the ACA, Section 1402. The clause defining the insurer subsidies when Congress specifically declined to appropriate any funds to Section 1402 for paying the insurance subsidy. Quote, paying out Section 1402 reimbursements without an appropriation thus violates the Constitution, the judge concluded. Congress authorized reduced cost sharing but did not appropriate monies for it in the fiscal year 2014 budget or since. Congress is the only source for such an appropriation, and no public money can be spent without one. The U.S. District Court, in this ruling, entered judgment in favor of the House of Representatives, barring HHS from using unappropriated money to pay insurers under Section 1402. What was at issue in Section 1402 was that the Obamacare provision that capped the amount of federal subsidies under Section 1402 that lower income families could use to pay for insurance purchased on state insurance exchanges, particularly the difference between the capped maximum based on a person or family's income in relation to the federal poverty level. Congress had refused to pass an appropriation to fund Section 1402, the section of the ACA that called for making the insurance subsidy payments. In a report issued March 2016, the Congressional Budget Office estimated that the cost for providing Section 1402 subsidies over the next 10 years, so 2016 to 2026, was estimated to be $130 billion, which you could say would be about $13 billion a year. Still quite a lot of money every year, $13 billion for that, just that little subsection. Forbidden by the Judge Collier's decision from diverting money Congress appropriated for other ACA provisions to pay Section 1402 subsidies, the Obama administration faced the prospect that the government could not pay subsidies to permit lower-income persons and families to buy the amount of health insurance Obamacare was written to provide them. Either this or insurers would be forced to charge middle and high-income persons and families such outrageous amounts for their insurance coverage to subsidize the poor under ACA that only the wealthiest could afford to buy health insurance. In other words, Obamacare was dead in the water if the Obama administration could not find a way to circumvent the district court's decision, U.S. House of Representatives vs. Burwell, to fund Section 1402, despite the fact Congress had refused to do so. Determined to keep Obamacare alive, the Obama administration decided to find a way around Judge Collier's ruling. The fix involved the Obama administration redefining the terms of the 2008 conservatorship agreements, which advanced funds to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac from a 10% dividend on monies borrowed to the federal government's confiscation of 100% of the future and imminent profits of these corporate-sponsored entities. Miraculously, the Freddie and Fannie pot of gold turned out to be almost exactly the amount the Obama administration needed to meet the anticipated insurance company subsidies required to keep Section 1402 in business. So how did Fannie and Freddie get this pot of gold, given that only a few years earlier both of these GSEs were bankrupt? In 2008, in the midst of the financial crisis caused in part by the collapse of the subprime mortgage market, the federal government decided to seize Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which at the time were two shareholder-owned companies. In passing the Housing and Economic Recovery Act of 2008, the U.S. Congress had fixed the regulatory issues at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, creating a mechanism for them to be placed into conservatorship at federal government's discretion and providing up to $187.5 billion in funds that could be advanced to the GSEs through a purchase of senior preferred stock, paying a 10% dividend. In deciding to bail them out, the federal government took control of the two giant mortgage GSEs, with Fannie and Freddie effectively put into government conservatorship. As part of the conservatorship, the federal government effectively acquired warrants convertible at a nominal price, which allowed the federal government to acquire 79% of the GSE's common stock. This resulted in causing dilution in the percentage of Fannie and Freddie common stock ownership that was left in the hands of private and institutional investors. Congress's intent was that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac would pay back the Treasury as the mortgage giants returned to profitability. But after the Treasury was paid back, the terms of the HERA or HERA agreement anticipated Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac would pay appropriate dividends to stockholders, including the federal government, of course, because they have 79%, leaving enough funds within Freddie and Fannie to conserve and preserve the assets of the two GSEs, anticipating their eventual return to a safe and solvent operating condition. In 2012, the Obama administration unilaterally decided to change the terms of HERA by sweeping all the profits of Fannie and Freddie into the Treasury's general fund. The Obama administration took this action, the so-called net worth sweep, without any congressional authority to do so. The result was that the U.S. Treasury found a way to sweep 100% of Fannie and Freddie's profits into the Treasury's general fund, leaving the giant mortgage GSEs vulnerable to the need for another government bailout should another disruption occur in the nation's economy. They have no nest egg. Government's taking all of it. Because of this decision, the Obama administration, on its own authority, simply decided to discontinue paying dividends to private and institutional owners of Fannie and Freddie common and preferred stock. Congress, in passing the HERA law, never anticipated the Obama administration would take over Fannie and Freddie and strip the agencies of all profits, a move that left private and institutional shareholders out in the cold. Leading up to the decision to sweep Fannie and Freddie's profits, the GSE's return to imminent profitability was known only by a few government officials and their consultants. Their own internal forecasts, uncovered in unsealed court documents, showed that Fannie and Freddie's profitability would soon dramatically outperform the amount of the allowable 10% dividend that the Treasury would receive under the existing senior preferred stock purchase agreements. 3 months later, on a quiet Friday in August, that change came. The Treasury Department would take all of the company's profits for its general purpose fund, helping to finance government operations and reduce debt. Did we reduce debt? 2012, 2000, 16 trillion, 18 trillion, 20 trillion? No, we didn't, but okay. That was the purpose, supposedly. The shift would better protect taxpayers, the government said. The decision to sweep into the Treasury all of the company's profits, which by now have far exceeded the amount of the total bailout and dividends owed, has attracted legal challenges from institutional investors and speculators in Fannie and Freddie. Originally set up by the federal government to make homeownership feasible in good times and bad, Freddie and Fannie were private companies with an implicit government guarantee. On August 17, 2012, these same officials and consultants succeeded in engineering with the Federal Housing Financial Agency and the Department of Treasury an amendment to the senior preferred stock purchase agreements that allowed the U.S. Treasury to grab all Fannie and Freddie profits, regardless how large Fannie and Freddie's earnings might be. Between 2012, when the Obama administration began its policy of confiscating all Freddie and Fannie's profits, and now, so between then and now, Fannie and Freddie have paid the U.S. Treasury General Fund more than $240 billion in dividends. Fannie and Freddie have been pouring money into the U.S. Treasury, which has received more than $240 billion in dividends from them since 2012. That prompted lawsuits by a number of investors who challenged a change in the terms of the bailout that reserved all profits for the government. In February 2017, an appeals court mostly upheld a lower court judge's 2014 decision to dismiss one of the shareholders' cases against the government. The new decision could be appealed. The point is that after May 12, 2016, when U.S. District Judge Rosemary Collyer ruled that HHS had to stop diverting ACA funds to pay Obamacare subsidies, the Obama administration realized that HHS somehow had to fund the estimated $130 billion the HHS would need in unappropriated monies to pay health insurers the ACA subsidies required to keep Obamacare alive in fiscal year 2013. Plaintiffs litigating against the Obama administration's confiscation of Freddie and Fannie earnings have challenged in court whether the Obama administration's decision to amend the preferred stock purchase agreement in August 2012 and sweep GSE profits of $130 billion in 2013 was an attempt to circumvent Congress on the single most important policy priority of the White House. The timing was particularly interesting, given that September 2012 marked the beginning of the sequestration discussions. Government documents leave little doubt profits from Fannie and Freddie confiscated by the U.S. Treasury have been used by the Obama administration to pay Obamacare subsidies and other items not appropriated by Congress. In complete and illegal circumvention of the district court's ruling and the Constitution's determination that only the Congress shall have the power to tax and spend. For instance, Chapter 3 of the Congressional Budget Office publication, The Budget and Economic Outlook 2015 to 2025, notes on page 63 that the major contributors to mandatory U.S. government spending include outlays for Medicaid, subsidies for health insurance purchases through exchanges, and the government's transactions with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Why Fannie and Freddie are specified in this context when Fannie and Freddie have had sufficient earnings to operate without government subsidies since 2008 is made clear a few pages later. On page 65 in table 3-2, the CBO report notes, mandatory outlays projected in CBO's baseline from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac for 2014 is negative $74 billion, and for 2015, negative $26 billion. The figures are negative dollar amounts because instead of paying out to Freddie and Fannie, the U.S. Treasury is collecting from Freddie and Fannie, with the proceeds going into the U.S. Treasury General Fund to pay mandatory outlays, including evidently continued subsidies to insurers as specified by ACA Section 1402. The footnote 14 on page 8 of the CBO report lets the cat out of the bag, noting the Obama administration considers payments from Freddie and Fannie to be outside of the federal government for budgetary purposes, recording cash payments from Freddie and Fannie to the Treasury as federal receipts. The Obama administration evidently considered this all too convenient redefinition of terms, allowed the government to argue the use of Fannie and Freddie profits to pay Obamacare Section 1402 subsidies was not in violation of the district court ruling. Or so they thought. A little bit more to the article, but you got the point. You absolutely got the point. This is so bad. This is the federal government taking a private company's profits and telling them we're only going to take these profits, a certain up to 10%, until we're paid back because we have to bail you out because of this massive housing crisis, which any government would have done, naturally. Not to say that it was right or wrong, any government would have done it, period, to save that whole thing. They did, and it was supposed to be temporary. We'll get you back on your feet, housing will return, everything will be good, you'll pay us back, and then it'll be on your own. They were never let go to go on their own, and then Obama had the definitions, if you will, changed on what really meant what. In mid-stride, we're going to change the terms and conditions, essentially, so that you have to give us all your profits pretty much forever until we feel it's enough. Since we own 79% of the shares of the company, of course. But we got the 79% of the shares because that's what we took in exchange for the bailout. So once they started paying us back, the federal government should have given the shares back, etc. Again, this is the equivalent, not even equivalent, it is the federal government taking a private business and saying, we're taking your profit. You will have just a tiny bit of cash in the bank. And by the way, God help you if we hit another downturn, because you're going to absolutely need another bailout, because we're not leaving you with any nest egg. We're not leaving you with any bonus cash that you could sit on for a number of years. In case a bad day happens, you could weather through it this time on your own without government help. No. We'll bail you out again. We'll bail you out again because we've been taking all your profits. The government is stealing profits from a privately owned company. And I get it. You could say, well, the government took them over. They didn't actually take them over. Didn't actually take them over per se. Again, there's an agreement. We're going to be the mass shareholder. You're going to pay us back for bailing you out. And then you're off to the races again. You're profitable again. Have a nice day. But you got to pay us back. So anything above this certain percentage we take as payment back. And the money was so good, they didn't want to stop. So what does that mean? All this time, the subsidies, you qualify for a subsidy, Obamacare. Oh, I got to pay $1,200 a month for my family. You got to pay $350, $400 a month for your family because you qualify for subsidy. The subsidy is coming from a privately owned company's profits. Now, naturally, the person receiving the subsidy, I don't care. I got to get my health care. It's my health care, and I need it now. Call J.G. Wentworth. No, It's their profits and they need it now. This is transfer of wealth. This is taking from one, handing it to the other. Once again. And now people got used to everybody's approved for health care. No pre-existing conditions. They got a taste of it for the last few years. Now we can't turn that around. They'll think Trump and the Congress and everybody's crazy. Can't turn that around. We've got it. We got to keep it now. And then to find out that the money wasn't there anyways, and Obama had to find a sneaky way to put it there. This goes even more to the point that Obamacare was an absolute failing pig of legislation. It should have never been enacted. It was absolutely horrible. It was exactly what Trump said. That was the worst legislation ever. Horrible. Repeal and replace, please. I can't believe that was happening. Take care.